Hey there, welcome to Culturally Sound. I'm here with Nadim Kuttab, and he is the co-founder of EXO. How do we
Xevio.
Xevio? Fantastic.
Yes, sir.
Thanks so much for clarifying that. And let's hear a little bit more about your journey and how you rove at where you are.
Sure. We're based in Germany. I'm a culturally ambiguous mix of a lot of different places. Moved 21 times in my life. Speak five languages, two of them not so great, and three of them pretty okay. And I moved to Cologne in Germany 2017 to start as a junior media buyer. I had no background in marketing, and they kind of threw me into native ads. And before I started in August of 2017, I did not understand marketing online. I was always confused at how Google as a company or Facebook as a company, we're making so much money and we're so large. And I was like, but they don't sell anything. How are they making money? And so I kind of was thrown to the deep end there and had in the affiliate space had my first campaigns, and I got wrecked for a couple of weeks before I started getting less wrecked and at some point started making money. I think it took me like 2.5, 3 weeks to make my first dollar in profit across a day, and then it just kind of went up from there. But yeah, native ads have always been my thing. I think out of coincidence more than anything else. I've run a bit of Facebook, but native ads for me were just a really interesting subject, and this is also what we focus on here at Xevio as an agency, because they're one of the traffic sources that I think are the least understood for cold user acquisition. And they're not, I mean, native ads are not small. These companies, they're not as big as Google or Facebook by any measure, but they're still worth billions. And there's people spending billions of dollars across different channels. And for us, it was an opportunity to kind of get into it, become one of the first agencies to kind of focus on it and to really bring on larger brands that you know and love on a performance basis into the native ads world. And that's what we've been doing for the last years. In my previous company, where I was CEO and co-founder, that I left in 2022, we were one of the fastest growing native agencies in Xevio. I believe we're currently the fastest growing native agency in the world. On track to manage 100 million this year, and the goal is 250 million. I don't know. I don't want to put it, 2025, but that's what I'd like to achieve. Realistically, probably sometime mid 2026 is when we'll be hitting the number.
Oh, always good to aim for the stars for sure. And that's impressive growth. So talk to us a little bit more about native ads for those that aren't as familiar with. I mean, I think everyone knows, you hop on Google and you see, ads on the right side, or you're into a blog and you see ads on the page. But where do where do native ads, because those are quite different.
Yeah. So display is like you said, those big banner ads of, Mercedes or Ford or whatever, based on where
Right.
you're at, that you'll
Right.
see, it's obviously an ad. It's trying to push a product. It has a lot of branding. Very often they're not performance-based ads. And then you scroll down underneath the articles and you'll see recommendations for content. And some of those recommendations are organic. They'll be, CNN will say, you click, here's 3 articles from CNN about stuff that's
Mhm.
currently going on. And underneath those ads, you'll have what we call native ads, or what are called native ads because they're native in their look and feel. They look like an organic post, but they're ads. So they'll be in the same look and feel as those organic slots above them. And you buy them on a CPM basis, like you do with most advertising nowadays. You pay a CPC, and then based on your CTR, you go into the auction with a CPM. And those ads are extremely effective at selling a story. So we run native ads exclusively with content pages behind them because people are browsing content, so they want to read. Give them something to read, right? Don't send them to a product page or a homepage. That's not gonna. You're taking them out of what they're doing and pushing them into your world, which is not going to work. People are just going to jump off. Um, but if you use content pages correctly, they'll read it like an article, right? Imagine you're reading a CNN as an example, right? For your American listeners here, you're reading a CNN page and you click on an article or an ad that looks like an article, and you'll read that article as if you're reading the CNN page, right? You'll be curious, you want to know more. The ad headline and the image caught your attention. It's about a subject that interests you, and we find that time on page of these advertorials is between 2.5 to 4 minutes on average.
Okay.
People are spending time reading these, and for a click price of, 20, 30, 40, 50 cents maybe, that's an
Mhm.
incredible value for money. And then they're clicking out to purchase a product or take some sort of action. So if native ads are done right, they can be equal or equivalent in value to a branded Google search click. And I've said
Mhm.
this for a while. We had companies like HelloFresh and Dr. Smile or these Invisalign companies. I don't know if they exist
Yeah.
in the US, but
Yep. Yep.
yeah,
They do.
that were able to achieve uh, click clicks at an equal or higher value to branded Google search via native ads, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Okay. So great. Now that we sort of have a better understanding of what that looks like, um, how did what decisions or what paths led you to there?
I've always been somebody who has a hard time doing only one thing for a long period of time. And I feel like a
Okay.
lot of entrepreneurs or people that create their own companies will be in a similar story. I take a lot of joy in exploring new things,
Mhm.
and I've accepted that I probably won't be at the same job for 50 years, right? Like it's just not who I am, and it's not what I enjoy doing. Um, Native ads and Xevio and the whole agency world has essentially allowed me to continuously explore and to take on new challenges on an almost daily basis, especially in performance marketing. There's so much movement, right? Especially like, AI, and there's deals being made and companies are being bought by other companies and new brands are coming in to take the place of old brands. There's so much movement in the marketing world that it never really gets boring. And I think that's what really appeals to me. And I think it's why we're successful as a team is because we all take great joy in exploring new things, trying new things, failing more often than not. Because marketing is, I feel like 90%, falling on your face and getting up again. And really just playing around and having fun. I've never had job that I've enjoyed so much. I'm not that old. I'm 31, right? So it's not like I've had 30 jobs before. But in the previous jobs that I've had before I came into marketing, it was always a little bit of like a 9 to 5.
Mhm.
And marketing is a lifestyle, especially performance marketing. And that's what makes it so appealing, I think, to the people that really like to own what they do
Mhm.
and like to be challenged on a daily basis.
Mhm. Interesting. So now you've said the 90% of your experiences end in failure, and then it's that 10% that you really build upon. That loop is sort of interesting, and let's talk about what allows you to be so resilient in your perseverance and facing the failures. Like, what systems are you integrating or leveraging to allow yourself to pick yourself up and get back to the next challenge or next.
Think it's the fact that the 10% is so rewarding. So when you crack something for a
Mhm.
product or for a niche that others haven't cracked before, it's going to take you time. And more often than not, like I said, you will fail a lot at the beginning before you see a success or a win. But it's those wins that are so motivating. I think it's like that adrenaline rush as a marketer of finding something new and being able to scale it and adding zeros to your daily budget,
Mhm.
and getting it to a point where suddenly you're one of the largest advertisers on those platforms in the world.
Mhm.
That's something that I think is incredibly rewarding. And we tie the whole team into it. I mean, we're 35 people right now, growing pretty fast. I'm trying to tamper that growth, but we are growing pretty quickly. And we've been around now, 20 months. So it's not been that long. And the fact that we're able to have a team that essentially participates in the losses as well as the wins is what makes the team and the system that we've built here so strong. I would say, when I talk about systems, it's not about AI or about the project management tools that we use. It's really the people.
Right.
Marketing is a people's job. It's a job where, an agency has no value if you don't have the right people in it. And so our whole system is built around curating that finding the right type of person, getting them into a position where they can succeed, and then giving them whatever resources they need to continue kicking ass in their space. And that's been
I,
our system here at the agency.
that's exceptional. So how do you, I mean, when you're faced with 90% failure, and how do you maintain those the hype or the excitement within your team, um, to keep them motivated and keep them focused on the goal and keep them energized and looking forward and as excited as you are clearly about the product and what you're doing.
I think it's a culture that has to come from the people that are driving the company forward. I have three co-founders. We created this company in a bit of an atypical way. Everybody got a quarter of the company, and we said, you know what, we're going to do this together as equals rather than having some sort of equity difference between the founders. And these four individuals, including myself, are really the people that get up there every day and say, okay, you know what, that didn't work, but we learned something. We look at the data, we look at the scroll depth, we look at the performance, the install rate, whatever, and we were able to identify areas where it did work, right? Every failure is only a failure if you don't learn anything from it. So by spinning these failures into things that we can take, actionable items that we can use for future tests, that's the exciting part, I think, for a lot of the team. Because sure, they'll have spent a day preparing something and it'll just completely fall flat. But the ad CTR was super high. Sure, the conversion rate was terrible, but the ad CTR, the idea is catching people's attention in the native feeds. So let's build on that. Let's change what's behind the ad. Let's change the creative, but let's keep the theme of what that ad was the same, and let's build something new behind it. And I think it's these unlimited opportunities, the fact that in the native space there's no black box. You can dissect the data, and I can see, okay, I know why something failed. Can I fix it? That depends on what it is that failed, right? Maybe the
Mm,
product is just the wrong product, and that's also a learning. And you move on with your life and find something else. But um, oftentimes it's something in the funnel that we can take apart as a team and start working on. And it might take a week, it might take a month, but it always gets better. It always works to some degree. Even if the learning is this isn't the right client for us, we need to move on. We can tell the client that and leave on good terms, and them knowing, hey, I need to change my value proposition, I need to change my product for native apps to work on a performance basis.
and so, I mean, in a lot of verticals, that conversation is really challenging, right? And having not only hey, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work, but this did. So let's hone in and let's focus on that. But then the inverse, where the client maybe isn't the right fit, and you've got to have that conversation with them, and end on good terms. Firing a client is never an easy task. That's that's really challenging. So
I
how
think
do you,
it's
please?
I think it's the word firing has a very negative connotation, right?
Right.
I say handing over a client the learnings
Yep.
that we've generated and
Mhm.
then explaining to them why they should stop spending their money on a channel that's probably not going to bring them further. So it's very much about spinning it in a way, not even lying, it's the truth, right?
Sure, sure, sure.
We're not able to spend your money effectively. And if you continue spending your money with us or with somebody else in this channel, it's probably going to be a waste. And most clients, not all of them, but most clients will take that information, be grateful that they've tested it in a relatively cost-effective and quick manner without high overheads and huge fees. And oftentimes we have clients that we've offboarded come to us later and be like, guys, I have a new product. Let's try it again. So
Mhm.
it's not even like it's not a divorce. It's not a way of, we're parting ways forever. It's much more of like a, hey, this thing here, not the right thing.
Yeah.
But if you have something in the future that you think was more fit for the broad audience that can read your native, let's talk.
Yeah, no, and I love the reframing, and you're absolutely right. Firing was absolutely the wrong term, but that's sort of the industry understood, right? Phrase is, we gotta fire those clients. So I
Let
really
go, let
appreciate.
go of a client. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I really appreciate your spin on that. So what brought that level of communication clarity? Like where did that come from? Is that all four founding members? Is that unique to you? Like, because
Chandler, trial and error,
yeah.
honestly. Sorry for jumping in there, but
No,
but
please.
again, back to this whole, the reason that good marketers fail at performance marketing is because they don't stick with it. It's not hard. It just takes time to understand it and to the nuances of the niche that you're doing. And whether it's Facebook or Google or native, it doesn't matter. Everything has a different approach. And you need to learn that approach for the products, for the geo, for the vertical that you're running in order for you to be an effective marketer on the channel. And it's the same with communicating with clients. I mean, we've onboarded hundreds of different projects over the last half a decade.
Mhm.
A lot of those projects didn't work. I mean, we've gotten better at filtering those out before they get started and just having a conversation before the client spends a dollar to explain to them why we think this project won't work and why we're not the right agency for them. Some clients don't listen and try it and fail elsewhere. Fine. I've done my job. I've tried my best, right? But the clients that come in, we're convinced about their product. We think it'll work. And more often than not, I'd say about 50-50,
Mhm.
especially in the e-com space, the product actually works.
Mhm.
And the biggest factor for the clients that we offboard or fire that didn't work is
Yeah.
because their product isn't packaged correctly for the audiences that we're reaching. I can give you an example. We had a protein brand, super very successful on social, but sorry, my screen keeps on going off. Very
Right.
successful on social, but they were targeting, they had like an 18-year-old topless bodybuilder on their homepage. And on native ads, they're going to be reaching 40, 50 plus audiences.
Hmm.
But when we started, I told him, this is probably not going to work. He
Hmm.
said, doesn't matter. We have budget. Try it. Tried it. Guess what? Everything was great until they got to the product pages where they saw this 18-year-old bodybuilder, with the protein mix. Of course, it didn't work. But it's one of those things where we now actively just say no to projects where we're not, I'd say 80% sure that there's a chance of success.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. So you touched on the intersection of AI earlier, and the introduction of AI, and shortly thereafter it was, oh, the CMO is dead. There's no longer a need for a CMO. Marketing team, forget it. Just hand it all over to AI. What's your take on that? Is that
Couldn't disagree more. I think the only
perfect?
reason that we're successful as an agency is because we leverage the AI tools that we have with very strong individuals. I think that if you rely on AI, you aren't going to innovate. Sure, AI can help you innovate. Don't get me wrong, right? But the innovation that sparks still has to come from a person.
Mhm.
And I think we're a while off before AI takes over from marketers. On the contrary, I think the good marketers are going to leverage AI to become more efficient and better at what they do. Will
Mhm.
become even stronger, and that gap between a mediocre brand that's running in-house marketing without a lot of talent versus a killer performance agency or an individual that does performance marketing is going to get wider. So the demand for these high performing individuals will spike
Mhm.
for sure because the difference between a good marketer and a great marketer is just going to get wider.
Love it. Yeah. No, and I mean, AI and its ability to create as opposed to iterate is really, I think, is that kind of what you're pointing to?
I also think that if everybody, I mean, it's the same. Everybody has tools available to them, right? So all you do is move the bar up, but that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that people are more or less successful. It just means that if you're not moving with that bar, you're not going to be as successful. But it
Right.
doesn't mean that that bar goes over everybody and everybody becomes redundant. I just
Right.
think that the resources and the ability of the industry moves forward, and it sets a new bar, which all of us have to be above and adhere to. And especially as performance marketers, we'll probably be the first to feel that bar and have to adjust our approach and become better at what we do. We're using those tools that are moving the bar upwards. The idea that AI completely changes the way of marketing is correct. The idea that it replaces marketers is just false.
This
I mean, we did
the
an interesting test earlier this year where because we do a lot of content pages. Native ads are a lot of content, and we've
Mhm.
produced 7,000 content pieces at Xevio since start last year. So it's been a lot of different content iterations.
Yeah.
Most
Wow.
of these content pieces are handwritten or written by a human, right? But more and more, we are using ChatGPT and different AI tools to help us come up with ideas and iterate. But we did a test where we took an AI content piece versus a human written content piece, and in 100%, we did I think 12 tests. 100% of these AI written pages were beaten by human written pages. Not even There wasn't even like one fluke that one. It was 100% of pages and content written by humans beat content written by AI. But content written by AI adjusted by a good copywriter
Hmm.
crushed it. Right? It had a really good chance at beating just the content produced by a human because there were fresh ideas or there were ideas in it that human didn't have without an AI prompt or an
Iteration
angle
process.
or a vertical. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Um, so I suppose where does this lead us? What is the future of native ads look like in, I mean, I used to say 5 years, but I think, as we point to the iterative process of how AI speeds everything
Yeah.
up, maybe 18 months, maybe less, but let's say 18 months to 2 years. What's your vision for where things are headed?
Native ads have always historically struggled with contextual content. So when you're reading an article on politics on cars is a great example, right? You're reading an article about a new Ford truck that
Mhm.
came out.
Mhm.
You currently will be served some ads that have something to do with cars, but that content is going to be written by a person that is running broad on 30 different publishers or 300 different publishers. So the content isn't going to be specific to what you're currently in the mindset that you're currently in. I think with AI, we're going to be seeing a shift in very, very quickly changing content pages based on the user that's clicking on them. So let me give you an example.
Mhm.
If I'm living in, New Jersey, I am a male between 30 and 40, and I have, I don't know, disposable income of X, probably can afford a used car every 5 years, as an example, right? Then you can serve this user content that is going to make him more likely to buy your product or service, or that's more tailored to him. You might have a picture of a guy in his 30s with a truck that's not brand new but used. With like you can do all of that dynamically and adjust the content on the fly for the user that clicked on that ad. And I think that's really exciting to see how native advertisers and native ads in general are going to change. And this has to be platform driven. This isn't something that we can innovate. We just don't have the tools. And you can see it. I mean, you look at the big AI companies, how many people they have working for them.
Of course.
An agency is going to have a hard time competing with them. But if these platforms are able to leverage that and have contextualized custom content for the user that's clicking on that ad, it's going to be a completely different journey. Imagine everything you see on the internet is suddenly tailored towards what you want to see and who you are and what you like. That's great. And
Mhm.
then we're talking like proper native advertising with hyper contextualized content and the experience that's packaged around who's clicking on the ad. And I think that's where we're heading.
And I mean, what technology are we leveraging here? Because the biggest concern is Google's dissolution of cookies, right? And they said, oh yeah, we're going to get rid of cookies. Oh no, wait, no, we're not. And I mean, how does that play into privacy? And I mean, you're in Germany, GDPR. How does that play in your perspective in how you're able to reach that 30-year-old that is looking for that used vehicle if we don't have access to that personalization and those details?
I think there's a lot of info you can read out of a way that a user browses the internet. So you don't even need to know their name or their address or their demographic, whatever. You can, I think, with especially with AI, back to the point, analyzing data and user behavior, you can
Mhm.
make certain decisions. It can be something general, like okay, on average between 2 and 3 p.m., people in this city are browsing or are in this type of demographic or browsing this type of content, and therefore they're this type of demographic. So I feel like there will always be a way to make it more contextualized. I agree with you that it's going to be hard. What I just told you with this, 32-year-old that
Right,
liked
right,
used
right, right.
cars that had, it's going to be hard to do that, especially in Europe with GDPR and Germany is a whole other case of private. I
Okay.
mean, it's extreme here, but I do feel like, especially in the US, we're going to start to see more and more of this targeted advertising that is, at the end of the day, I think, A, good for the user, gets content that
Mhm.
is more in line with what he wants to see, that is more tailored towards who he is. So he'll enjoy the content more. That's why he'll read it more, right? But also it'll increase efficiency of ad dollars and just in general drive the CPMs up while increasing for ROI for advertisers. And I think that that's something that is in the interest of everybody. I feel like native advertising has gotten to a point where you're not going to see jumps on a CPM basis of 100 or 200%. Back when I was started,
Right.
markets were developing super fast, prices were all over the place. Those days are over. But with the introduction of more targeted advertising, and especially advertising that is tailored towards the type of people that are reading that ad, you can charge more for that ad because it has a higher value, and therefore you're going to see those jumps in the future, I think, for native advertising. I think a lot of people ask me, like, Nadim, do you own Taboola stock? Do you own Outprint stock? Um, yeah, you should too, because I feel like these companies, I don't know who's going to be the one that comes out on top, but it'll be one of these that's out there today, will end up creating an experience in the native ad space that's so good and that's so valuable and explain to advertisers how to use that in a way that's going to create an immense amount of value for the advertising space. I mean, back to my point, without AI and without all these tools, we're already able to compete with branded Google search.
Mhm.
I always say we're a small agency in Germany. If we can do it, think about what the big ones can do.
Right. Right. Well, maybe we want to keep a lid on that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I one of the biggest features that we push as a company as a communications consultant is building trust with
Yes.
your team, building trust with your and what you pointed to, fail quick, but let's take learnings. And I feel like that really builds trust with the team, right? It's okay to fail. We want you to
Yeah.
fail, but let's not fail the same way twice. Let's always iterate and let's learn from those failures and move forward. And as quickly as we can move through that agile feedback loop, stay agile and continue to learn. How do we build trust with the people that you're trying to target with ads to say, you know, our content is, legit, it's real, and we know that privacy policy is a problem. So how do we balance that? Because that sounds like a really tight, really narrow tightrope of we want to learn information about you so that we can target ads that are relevant to you and matter to you and are meaningful to you, but we also understand that you don't want to tell us exactly who you
We
are.
don't want to be intrusive. We don't
Precisely.
want to be, we don't want to reach you at a point in time where you're doing something and then you get served something that might be playing on your emotions in a negative way. Like that's not at all what advertising. I think that's the
Great.
wrong type of advertising. But
Great.
especially with users, I think it's really difficult to explain to them the value that targeted ads have because
Hmm.
I mean, advertising as a whole has a very negative connotation in
Yes.
for your average person, right? They'll be like, I don't want to be sold stuff. I don't want to see ads. Screw this.
Right.
Most of what they do is funded through advertising, whether it's browsing the internet and reading articles, whether it's watching
Yeah.
TV, like it's sports, right? They're all
Hmm.
funded by ads. And this with either you pay for a service or you are the service. That's one of those things that I learned relatively early on in marketing.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of the networks and a lot of the advertising companies out there have to do a better job at explaining this and just explaining that, we want to serve you higher quality content. We want what we serve you to be better. We want it to be brands that you love and like and care for. And also doing, winning over political will. But this is a hard debate, Chandler. It's not easy. I mean,
Yeah.
there is a fine line between invasive and constructive or useful. And I think that if you give advertisers too much, they'll take a lot. You give them a finger, they'll take an arm,
Yes.
because especially, that's what advertisers want to do.
Hmm.
And I think it's also our responsibility as advertisers to serve content that isn't a scam and that isn't super intrusive or plays on people's negative emotions, even if it might make you short-term amount of money. It will negatively impact the legitimacy of this type of advertising moving forward. And this is something that native ads have struggled with for as long as they've existed,
Hmm.
right? There's a
Right.
lot of trash, and there's still a lot of trash on native ads. It's getting less and less because more legitimate advertisers are coming into it, but there's still stuff out there where I'm like, I wouldn't want this on my website, and that's
Right.
the truth. And networks have to do a better job at stopping that. Advertisers have to do a better job at finding companies that are more legitimate to work with. I mean, when I first started running native ads in Germany, I was told by everybody, don't do it. Not worth your time. There's no money to be made. We were spending tens of millions a year in Germany on native ads. Our largest client is I don't want to say the numbers, they're insane, is
Yeah.
making nine figures a year with our advertising off of in large part native ads
Hmm.
with a super legitimate product. It's a huge brand. They were a sponsor at the Euros, the European soccer championships, right? Like there's so
Yeah.
much to learn here that our most lucrative project ever has been a super legitimate brand.
Yeah.
And if you tell affiliates that, they'll be like, but how do you find these brands, marketers? Like, it's easier to make money with something that has a higher margin. I agree, probably short term, but the long term value that you can provide these bigger companies is just going to bring you so much more recurring revenue as an agency than these small gigs that are serving products that are trash.
So been I forget what I was watching. I think it was some show on Netflix, but it spoke to we've always had this adage of survival of the fittest, right? You have to, yeah, always have to be on the attack. You always have to be aggressive. You always have to be assertive. And I've never subscribed to that methodology. And I've always it was always off-putting to me. I was always the collaborator, the supporter, the helper, the hey, you're struggling, let's look at and let's talk about and that type of nature. And what I was watching was pointing to the idea of the concept of survival of the friendliest and how that's actually better served society over the long term, like you're saying, where dogs, for instance, were they became a companion. They sniffed out danger. They helped find food. They were super collaborative in their relationship, and in return, we treated them well. We
Well,
fed them, we cared for them, we did all of the things that we needed to do to keep them healthy and supportive in that nature. And
mhm.
so when you look for a partner, and this sort of long-winded tie around to what you were sharing, looking at that client of yours that had this great legitimate product, is that sort of a key component to clients that you work with, and is that a key aspect that you look for where there's legitimacy and honesty and um, purity in the product that they're looking to offer and you're looking to
I
support?
think I think advertisers and I mean brands that work with advertisers are often very hesitant to share stuff with you,
Hmm.
right? So the way that I mean, I do a lot of the sales in our team. I'm not alone now. We have very strong sellers, but the way that we generally position ourselves is that we're a very transparent partner.
Hmm.
We do that at the very beginning in the way that clients understand. So no setup fee, no commitment, no bullshit, whatever expenses for literally we go into this project with risk. We're
Full
not
trust.
going to make money in the first month, right?
Hmm.
And I tell clients that I'm like, you know what? You're going to be spending 10 or 20 grand on a test. I'm earning like two, three, 4K off of that test, and my costs are probably close to seven or eight. I'm not going to make money either. Right? Let's do this together in the interest of the long-term partnership and build and grow together. And the fact that I can go to a partner and I can tell that partner this isn't going to work before they've spent the 10K, before they've even spent five, and just tell them, listen, our results are not there. This product is not performing. Let's cut the test now. Sure, that's going to cost me money. It'll save the client money. But in the long term, that client is much more likely to recommend what we do, come to us again with another product or a service. I mean, how many people change companies? As a CMO at one company, moving it to a co-founder, the CEO of another one. This happens all the time. And so our goal has been to build ourselves as a brand that you can work with that isn't going to rip you off. And especially in a world, I don't know how it is in the US, but in Europe, agencies is quite brutal. Like they're
Yeah.
expensive. They'll milk whatever they can out of whatever pocket they can find
Hmm.
in general, not all of them, but a lot of them. And so by going completely against the stream, we can build that trust because every client, every brand has already worked with agencies. So when they come to us, oftentimes they're like, I've never had this before, Nadim. How the hell are you guys like? How do you operate like this? Why
Right.
do you operate like this? And I tell them quite transparently because we want to work with you guys for the next 5 years, 10 years. We want to make millions with you together, ideally, right?
Right.
And that's only ever going to work if we're fair and transparent. And we expect the same from you. And not all clients will be fair and transparent. And then it's my job to call them out.
Again, with the hard conversations. Good for you.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So how does this tie in? I mean, we sort of loosely looped it in to the internal team and culture and how that looks within your team. How do you how do you expand upon that and how do you carry that forward with that incredible scale that you spoke to? I mean, it sounded basically like you were looking to double where you were to where you want to be in within a year, 18 months on the outside. What does that look like? What systems do you have in place that are being successful? What systems do you have in place that are failing that maybe you need to review and iterate upon? What does that look like for you?
I think one of the largest challenges, let me start one step behind. One
Yes.
of the largest challenges as a relatively young founder, I was CEO for the first time at 27, is you have no idea what you're doing and you're extremely confident. You don't become a CEO at 27 if you're timid, right? You believe in yourself and you believe in what you're doing. And that means that more often than not, you're going to get humbled pretty quickly. Um, the fact that we're in a position right now where I have support, I have external consultants that I talk to whenever I have a problem. I have a legal guy, I have a biz dev guy, I have a sales guy, I have a internal guy for culture, and so we have people that we can go to
Mhm.
and ask support with that understand our scenario and that have been working with us for years. And at the same time, really enable a strong culture internally. We have one of the most fun workplaces I have ever been to. Our office is nice. We invested a lot of money. Everybody has a standing desk and the latest laptop and a very fair salary. I mean, we have people coming to us and asking for one thing and getting 30% more because I'm not going to pay that. It's too little to live comfortably in Germany, right? And things are getting expensive everywhere. You guys know that in the US. It's not different here in Europe. Um, so by being very proactive with enabling growth, by rewarding quickly, fast, and also specifically towards what people are doing well, um, you can build a strong company culture where everybody feels responsible. Have a team of founders. We have 35 founders. That's how it feels like, at least, right? When we operate, we have 35 people that live and breathe for the company because that company gives them opportunities, that company gives them a very fair salary and growth potential and free food and gym memberships and phones. And like there's a ton of these things. We went to Malaga in the summer, 3 days, no work, just fun, team building, whatever. It was great. And people really, really enjoyed it. It was really expensive. And renting a yacht for 16 people when you're a company that's like 18, 19 months old is brutal on cash flow, but
Hmm.
it really drives home the fact that we're one team. We support each other. I don't like the word family. You have a family, take care of them, but you are here in a professional environment where you help each other get the most. And we do bonuses, we do profit shares, we do dividend payments to different partners. I mean, at the end of the day, the company's doing well. Everybody's doing well here. And that's something that I think really drives everybody forward. It means that they'll work when they have to, they'll deliver when they have to, but it also means that they'll take time off when they have the time. But I don't care if it's 1 p.m. on a Friday and you're done with your work.
See ya. Yeah,
Nobody cares.
yeah. No, and man, that's a breath of fresh air for sure. And I mean, you always hear about the pontificator saying, this is how it should be done. The fact that you're living it is incredibly
Chandler, it's expensive. I mean, as the founder and co-founder and part owner of this company, yeah, it eats into what I'll take home at the end of the year. And that's okay because I know that next year we're going to take home more,
Mhm.
but so is everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what grew or inspired that perspective in you? Like where does that come from?
I've been on the receiving end. I think most people have
Mhm.
at some point in their life, right? Unless you're like 21, straight out of college and create a company, but most people have worked before and they've seen the differences that you have between, the CEO or the founder of a company and, a junior. Also in lifestyle and the way that they carry themselves, salaries. If you have 1,000x difference, especially at a small company like we do,
Mhm.
between your lowest paid employee and the CEO, that's not good. I have people at my company that aren't co-founders earning more money than I am. Maybe not after dividends at the end of the year, but that also depends on what we do with those dividends, right? But the salary that they take home monthly, the benefits, they might get a vehicle, like that. We really, really invest and make sure that the people are happy and those that need it have the resources and the support that they need. And that makes them incredibly good at their job. I always say you're not going to be good at anything if you don't enjoy what you're doing. And so we have people that'll join for one job, realize they enjoy something else much more. We'll
Mhm.
shift them to that role, bring in somebody else to replace them, and then two people are super happy at the jobs. Two people are crushing it on and professionally, and it
Mhm.
just it means that you need to stay nimble. It's quite expensive as a company, and we are an expensive agency in part because we are good at what we do because of the people that we have, and those people need to be paid and rewarded and incentivized and grown and nurtured, right? But I always say, especially in marketing, you're only expensive if you're not good at what you do. We could charge 100% on ad spend, and there are clients that would still be much cheaper working with us than if they did it themselves. And I think that's really what drives it home. I know the value. We can measure it as performance marketers. It's not hard to see the impact that we have on a client. If 3 months before we joined, and then we joined, and then a month later they've had their cost per acquisition. I could charge whatever. It's still going to be cheap. And so that gives us a lot of flexibility with our partners to also make sure that we're paid fairly and are providing value.
Mhm. Brilliant.
And it funds the whole system that we have here. I don't think it's scalable to 10,000 people. Don't get me wrong, right? But I also don't think the best agencies are those with 10,000 people in them.
Okay, so that's an interesting perspective. The whole idea of consolidation, right, is everything's getting eaten up by the bigger. And we know that those bigger ships are like a Titanic, right? You,
Yeah.
you just you can't turn them to avoid that iceberg. You've got to be able to be small and agile. So then you get acquisition of smaller teams, but then they're trying to be run by the accounting firm of the person that acquired them. They don't know the nuance and what makes them tick.
I think Chandler, part of the problem with acquisitions is you lose the people that are driving the company forward, right? I mean, oftentimes, especially if you're building a company for an acquisition, you have an intention to leave, right? You want to get out.
Right,
As a founder, as a CEO, whatever, you don't want to stay there 20 years. That's not your
right.
goal at all. Otherwise, you'd keep doing it because it's
Mhm.
making money and you're happy in your current role. So you're looking for that payout. And I think the challenge with these acquisitions is that people that are really important to the system often won't be valued enough. in this new construct because the culture will change regardless of how they spin it during the acquisition. It's different if you're owned by a bigger agency.
Hmm.
The pressure to perform month on month, quarter on quarter, and to grow is suddenly there. We have 2 months of no growth, but we're pairing something big. I don't care. We're great. I'm super happy. Right?
Hmm.
It doesn't have to be growth. The fact that we're growing now is an added benefit. The fact that we're profitable, great, but it's not the goal right now. The goal is to build a system and an environment that we can hit that 250 million in annual ad spend. And that doesn't work if you don't have control of your company.
Where does that cap out? So where does, you're, it sounds like you're suggesting, the you get too big, you lose that
I
nuance,
think
that
from
culture.
around 50, 40 to 50 people, you need to change your system. And so what we're trying to do now, we will crack that number next year for sure,
Yep. Yep.
is essentially operate multiple companies. We've
Interesting.
already founded our second. We will have a third next year. So the idea is that we have, rather than having one big agency, different units that are working relatively independently. There might be administrative and strategic overhead that are connected, right? We'll have one CFO, one CTO, one CEO, but that's it. Um, the different companies are going to be operating relatively independently. There will be shared resources. There will be projects that are moving between each other. That's fine. But with it, culturally, it's essentially a team of 5 to 15 people. Those teams are unbelievably efficient. I mean, you can spend with one solid team lead and two juniors on the marketing side, 5 million a month. That's insane, right? I mean, if you look at what these big companies are investing and putting into to spending 5 million a month,
Yeah,
it's a lot more than one team lead and two juniors. It'll be an
sure
entire
is.
system with account managers and people that are auditing the accounts, and but they're also doing this for 30 other accounts. And so the problem is that you lose that focus
Precisely. So how
and
do you,
you lose the driver, right? You need to have somebody that pushes projects forward. And if you don't,
right,
if your team lead isn't a driver, it's not going to go anywhere. You need to have somebody to drive forward the company and make sure the culture is intact.
right, right. How do you keep that communication fresh and tight and not siloed and open and transparent so that,
We're, go ahead.
well, so that pace maintains that speed and that focus and things aren't getting lost in the fractures.
Things will always get lost. Let's make that very clear. Growth is a painful process, and I
Right,
don't think you can grow from 5 to 30 people or from 30 to 300 without having cracks. And let's make that
right.
very clear. I just think that it's this whole back to the whole point of making mistakes. I am pretty painless in trying something for a month and it completely failing and then changing again, as long
Mhm.
as it's only a month and not a year, right? So the idea is that from a company perspective, we are extremely flexible at, and willing to try things and fail. And this isn't just on the marketing side, which I think is very important for success on the marketing side, but also on the company strategy side. I'll
Mhm.
try something, I'll bring in somebody, an external, an internal, whatever, we'll try positions. And if they don't work, we'll move on. Try a project management tool or some sort of video management, video asset management
Sure.
tool, and we'll realize after 2 weeks, like, oh, this is a nightmare. It's not doing what we want. We'll move on. Sure, we'll have burned some money, and we'll have burned some time, but we'll have tested something, and eventually we'll find something that works, and it'll let us grow in the right direction. I think
What
it's much more
drives,
efficient than taking 3 months to make a decision.
I totally agree. Totally agree. So what drives that decision matrix? How do you filter what's successful and what isn't?
That's a hard question. I think there's a lot of different projects and a lot of different scenarios, and everything has probably a slightly different matrix. In
Sure.
general, I think you can measure it with employee satisfaction,
Hmm.
right? Are people taking pride in what they do? Do they like what they do? Are they enjoying it?
Hmm.
Not everything is fun, but as long as they're having fun, you're good, right? And having fun is in enjoying what they're doing. Then every technical field or in Germany a beer, right? At 2 p.m. But uh,
Sure.
the which happens. Don't get me wrong, and I think it fuels creativity. It's totally fine, but it's important that there's output
Hmm.
always. So it
Hmm.
doesn't matter whether we're successful or we're not successful. Something needs to be delivered on time,
Okay.
ideally,
Mhm.
right? And if it's not on time, why didn't we deliver it on time? Let's make sure it doesn't happen again. And I think the third thing is obviously revenue value. Is this a profitable project? Now,
Mhm.
most of our tests are not profitable. That's a cash burn for us as an agency. But we have several very large profitable projects that allow us to continue that cycle. And I mean, ideally by the end of this year, we're in a position where we could lose any key account overnight and still be profitable as a company and still be able to innovate and still be able to change and grow. And if we get to that role, if we get to that position by the end of December this year, we'll be in a really, really good spot next year because it means that there's no pressure whatsoever. There's no, we will have obviously the usual agency pains of some things not working one week and clients coming to us with demands that are hard to fulfill. But we will be in a very good position to quickly pivot, take on new projects, continue that testing cycle. And I think that's really what fuels our growth. The only reason that we're able to grow so quickly and the only reason that we're able to be so successful in the projects that we take on is because we've built that system of very efficient, fast growth.
Setting expectations upon entry as opposed to upon
Exactly.
exit.
Clients will come in and they'll know within 4 weeks, they'll know whether we'll keep them or not. And so
Hmm.
there isn't that expectation within 4 weeks to be like, okay, so what's next? Right? I'll tell them
Hmm.
proactively,
Hmm.
we'll grow this account to 15K a day, no problem. Right? Or nope, goodbye. It's been fun. Or this is what you have to change and then
Right,
come back when you've changed it.
right, right. Wow.
And I
Okay.
think, Chandler, one thing which I've heard this because I speak at a lot of marketing conferences and I talk to a lot of people. And a
Hmm.
lot of a lot of marketers and affiliates ask me, Nadim, why did you move into the agency world?
Right.
Um, I think in part because it's a lot more entertaining. You don't have to like struggle for your survival every day. You have some sort of longevity to what you do. Especially it allows you to build a team. I'm a marketer who probably wouldn't love to spend his day performance buying anymore. That's the truth. I have campaigns, I take them on, I look at stuff, but they're not mine.
Hmm.
I love that. I love the fact that I can go home and if I finish my emails and I'll take a call, I'll do a podcast at 6 p.m. and at
Sure.
7 I'm done. And that's not something you can do in affiliate marketing. It doesn't exist. You're always on 7 days a week, whether it's your wedding, whether it's your honeymoon, your campaigns are running. And if you don't take care of them, they'll be spending your money and losing it. And I
Right.
think this is something that I think a lot of people underestimate is there is this fine balance between money, success, and happiness. And I think a lot of people focus in the marketing world on the first two, where they're like, I want to make a lot of money, I want to be hyper successful, but are they happy? And I can tell you from experience, and I think there was an interesting this American company that paid everybody 70 grand, right? In the company,
Yep.
everybody got 70K at
Yep.
least. Money will help you to a certain point,
Hmm.
but whether I make a million, two, or 10, or 20, or 30, I couldn't care less. And I think this is a motivator. I might make a ton of money, don't get me wrong, but it's not my driver in
Right.
life, right? And this is what I think makes, and this is not just, this is shared by all of our co-founders and by the team. We're not, I wouldn't say greedy, but we're not motivated only by money. It's a nice benefit to having a job that is rewarding and being in a community of people that love what they do.
It's a degree of moving away from envy and moving into contentment, right?
Yeah. And just
And
being okay if there's a bad month or a month where you maybe don't make money as a company. You
right,
don't beat yourself up about it. You look at what went wrong, and this is always going to happen in growth. I don't know any company that is just like this, right? It's always going to be,
right,
you know,
yeah.
and
What goes up
that
comes
the
down.
exactly. And
Yeah,
it's important when it starts to come down that you catch it and you bring it up again.
right.
Um, but you do it with gusto. You enjoy what you do. You're not stuck in this 9 to 5 that I was saying that I hate so much, right? And
Right.
um, I think that's the exciting part of being a founder is that you have the flexibility to piece together your day in whatever way you want.
Absolutely agree. I've always been conflicted about the idea of the binary nature of work-life balance, right? I've always wanted it to be and I know this word is worn out, but synergistic, right? Your work is life and life is work, and there's that joy that associates too. And I've heard you use that enjoy many times in the importance of what your team is doing and how they're experiencing what you're providing to them as the founders. So, final question: what does success look like to you? You've used it in conjunction with two other words, but what does success look like to you?
I would consider myself successful if I am happily married with children and financially stable.
How close is that?
For me, that is the simplest. Honestly, I want to be happy in life in what I do. I want to
Hmm.
enjoy what I do, both privately and professionally. And I want to be at a position where I don't need to work for money, but I can work because I enjoy it. And
Got
that's where I am right now, which is crazy because I don't have enough money to retire. Don't get me wrong, right?
it.
But the fact that I'm at a role at a position right now where I'm happy in private and probably have to work a bit less, but I feel like second year of a company that's going to be inevitable. It's getting better. And definitely get to a point where I can do what I want when I want with whom I want and just enjoy life. And I
I
think
love
this is
that.
something that a lot of people strive for, but they come at it from the wrong angle. They're like, I need to make as much money as possible so that I can be free,
Yeah,
right? And that's not at all correct because what is enough? And from experience, I can tell you that that number will never go down, right? You're
yeah,
never going to be like, I made $1 million this year. I'm happy. That
yeah.
doesn't exist. If your motivator is money, that number will always go up because there's always somebody who made a zero more than you a year. But literally, there are very few people, probably Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and Bill
Hmm.
Gates, that can say there's probably not no one making a zero more than me a year. But most people, and I've seen this many times in the industry, will have goals and reach them and then set goals higher and have that rat race with themselves where honestly, if they had other priorities aside from just wealth, they'd be much happier in life.
Those goalposts just keep moving. Yeah,
Exactly. So
they just
set yourself something realistic and don't put a number to it. Put something more of like a lifestyle. How do you want to live? What do you want to do? And how do you want to be living to get there?
very insightful words. So, Native Hub, it's up and coming. Let's hear your thoughts here. What do you
So
most about that?
The Native Hub was a brainchild of mine with my team here about a year and a bit ago.
Hmm.
And the reason that we founded it and the reason that it's not priced at like $1,000 a month is that, or for free, right? The reason that we created it was to offer people, the industry as a whole, a place to exchange ideas. Right now for native, there's plenty of groups for Facebook and TikTok and Google. Like there's a ton of resources out there, but for native, there's really a total lack of authority. Nobody owns what is native, how is native run. If I need help with native, where do I go? That doesn't exist right now. So our idea is we want to start creating a community. It doesn't make us any money. That's not the priority here. That's why it's $100 a month, not 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever. And it's not free because otherwise there's a million people in it that aren't spending any money. But it's priced at a point where it's painful enough that you cancel your subscription if you're not running native ads. But it's cheap enough that if you're running native ads, it's worth it. That we can create a community around building native and ideally also leverage that community for growth. So what we want to do is we want to have the best brands, the best marketers, and the best agencies that we're in touch with. We want the experts in the native field to be associated with Xevio, to work with us, that we can come to them with projects and ask for their help with stuff. It's essentially for us a community tool that we can build our own little native world in so that we have experts in content, experts in designers, tech people, agencies, marketers, brands that are all in that sphere that can exchange ideas, that can work with each other, but that we can also lean on for support for ideas or for traffic. If we have the craziest project and it's in Spain and nobody speaks Spanish and knows what they're doing, we can go into the hub and be like, hey, Jose, you're living in Barcelona, you're great at what you do. Let's have a conversation because we have a project for you. And we know this guy. We're talking to him. There's weekly Q&As where there's an exchange, there's forums, discussion boards. The whole idea of building this community. I mean, I was in Budapest last week and I met guys from the Native Hub, and it was amazing. It's just hanging out, having a coffee, talking about our native campaigns. It was really rewarding, and I feel like this is something that doesn't exist today. So the hubs, the whole purpose of the hub is for us a way to bring people together, but also for us to find people that we want to work with, find brands, find marketers, find agencies that we can combine our forces with to achieve that number that we've set out to do.
Love that. That's outstanding. So, where can people find you? Where?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest. Nadim Kuttab. There's not that many of Nadim Kuttabs out there. My actual legal name is different now. So I got married and combined my name with my wife's name. So I'm actually Nadim Batista Kuttab now. But my stage name is Nadim Kuttab. So if
There
you
we go.
if you want to find me, LinkedIn or our website www.xevio.io, where everything's there. If you're running native ads, you want to join a community, join the hub. It's under native-hub.io, I believe. I should double check that
You
before
got
I
it.
say something
Yep,
wrong.
that's
Yeah,
it.
sweet.
Yep.
So find us if you are running native, if you're a brand, if you're an agency or marketer. We're always keen on exchanging ideas and getting to know people in the space. And there's a surprisingly few amount of really good native advertisers out there. So I'm always excited to meet people that are doing crazy numbers that I've never heard of.
Right.
It doesn't
Yeah.
happen often enough. I wish it would happen more often.
That's excellent. And we'll include that all in the show notes. But Nadim, thank you so much for your time, your insights, your thoughts. It was a truly inspiring conversation, and I really appreciate you and the time that you've shared. Thank
I
you.
had a great time, Chandler. Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful.
Thank you.